Thanks, sir. I do support the Second Amendment. I think that the Second Amendment, as defined by the NRA, that we have the individual right to possess firearms is the way it should be interpreted. I've always been endorsed by the NRA. I do carry a license to carry a pistol, although I've never done that. I did vote for the concealed carry bill last year, and I'm not sure that when you're going to remark about what can we do if the feds would change the Second Amendment. I think that becomes a legal question, but I do support the Second Amendment and will to the very end.
Thank you, Mr. Eisner.
As Mr. Hartman does, I also have my concealed carry permit. I have a job that puts me in some danger from time to time as a lawyer. I tend to make some people mad. So I frequently carry a pistol with me, and I believe there's probably one in my car as we speak right now. The state legislature is probably limited in its ability to attack this issue. It really depends on the outcome of the presidential election and what Supreme Court justices are appointed to the United States Supreme Court. There are limits constitutionally to Congress's power and certainly to the power of the states to regulate firearms in place already. However, there is an issue that has been decided by the Supreme Court already that gives the individual citizen the right to keep and bear arms. There's also language in the Second Amendment that refers to a militia. And if we see a Clinton presidency with 2 or 3 Supreme Court justices appointed during that time, they may very well take a different interpretation of the meaning of the Second Amendment, which would limit the state legislature's power to do a lot of things. So there's great importance in the national election as it relates to this issue. I will fight in every way that I can possibly fight as a legislator, as a lawyer, and as a citizen to make sure that we continue to have an individual right to bear arms. But the national election certainly has a great deal to do with what happens in that. Short of a constitutional amendment, which would require ratification by the states and the legislatures of the states, and it may come to that at some point, at this point the presidential election is far more important to the outcome of that issue than our local election will be. But you can be assured that I will fight in any way that I can.
Thank you, Mr. Colson.
Yes, I also 100% support the Second Amendment. And I think it's very important that we understand what the Second Amendment says. It gives the right to bear arms. It also does speak about a well-maintained militia. I believe that every law-abiding citizen has the right to bear arms and protect themselves and their families and their property. It is very important how the outcome of the national election, what the outcome will be. You have a situation where you could have extreme one way or another. And I think that in order to, as a state legislator, it's going to be difficult to necessarily, I don't think it's going to be 100% black and white when it comes to how do we help maintain the Second Amendment. We can ratify the Constitution, as Mr. Eisner said, which there is talk of that anyways. But the bottom line is, I will do whatever I can to make sure that the Second Amendment is interpreted as it's written, and the only way I can do that is by fighting for the rights of the citizens of Pocahontas and Randolph County to make sure that they can keep and maintain their arms.
Thank you, Mr. Moore.
Yes, sir. Thank you for the question. I, like Mr. Hartman, also have been endorsed by the NRA. And in the Second Amendment, it states that every citizen has the right to keep and bear arms, and that right shall not be infringed upon. And I'm a candidate that does not look past that. I will fight for every citizen in Randolph and Pocahontas County to make sure that their rights are not taken from them. As far as the federal level, really, like Mr. Hartman and Mr. Eisner have stated, and I believe Mr. Colson did as well, that is going to be a legal matter that would have to be taken up that way. But I do want the citizens to understand that you also have two candidates here that have also got F and D ratings from the NRA, and that kind of scares me a little bit in their decision and their direction and why they were rated that way. And at the end of this forum, I would like to ask both of them if they could let us understand why that they received the ratings that they did, just so the people of this district can understand why they got those ratings. Now, the questionnaire that I received spoke about clips, magazines, and Sunday hunting. Sunday hunting, if you look at it from a perspective I do, is a blue-collar worker that works pretty much 8 to 7, 9 to 5, whenever I have to work. There are Sundays that I am not eligible to hunt. Sunday I can't because right now it's illegal to. For those folks, I would like to say yes, I would like to open that up for those citizens that don't have the opportunity to hunt through the weekday so that they can go out and hunt as well. But again, as far as your Second Amendment rights, I will fight tooth and nail every day to make sure that that right is kept in place.
Thank you, Mr. Baylaw.
Well, I totally support the Second Amendment. I was raised, my father, all my uncles, they went hunting, and that's the way I was raised. And you have to remember, the Second Amendment was written not for hunting. They talk about the right, the duty to overthrow a tyrannical government. So all this debate about semi-automatics and big clips and all that stuff, at the time that the Founding Fathers wrote the Second Amendment, they gave the citizens the right to own the same kind of weapons that the Army, the militias did. That's our right, and it's beyond even the constitutional right. I believe it's a natural right. It's a natural right for people to want to protect their families, and it's a natural right to want to resist tyranny. I don't know what the state can do. Like I said, I totally support the Second Amendment, and I would go so far as to support civil disobedience at any kind of effort to take that right away from us. But the Second Amendment, the problem is now with all these mass shootings and so forth, there's other issues here, mental health issues and so forth. And the problem is that people do not trust their government. So we can't even have like common sense gun laws to keep weapons out of the hands of mentally ill or everything, because everybody looks at it like a foot in the door. And because the people don't trust our government, they don't want to give them any leeway to deal with these problems. But I support the Second Amendment, and we should have better government so we can keep the guns out of the hands of people who shouldn't have them.